My name is Kelly, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town and went to the local high school. That's where I met Jerry. He was a tall, charming guy who always stood out. We were teenagers, and it felt like love at first sight. We started dating and soon became very close. We got married at 25. Looking back, we were too young and didn't know much, but at the time, it seemed like a perfect fairy tale. Jerry was always fun and carefree. He had big dreams and a big personality. I was more practical, focused on building a stable future. We seemed to balance each other well, or so I thought. Soon after we married, I found out I was pregnant with our daughter, Olivia. It was unexpected but welcome. Jerry was thrilled, and for a while, it felt like we were on top of the world. We were a young couple, excited about our family and our future. However, as time passed, problems began to appear. Jerry's carefree attitude seemed more like irresponsibility. He was always looking for the next big thing and never happy with what we had. Meanwhile, I was working hard to keep everything together for Olivia. Jerry loved her, but he was more focused on his own adventures than on being a responsible father. One evening, after putting Olivia to bed, I sat down with Jerry in the living room. I needed to talk to him about his spending and his lack of focus. It was a tough conversation, but it had to happen. "Jerry, we need to talk," I began, trying to stay calm. "What's up, Kim?" he asked, not looking away from the TV. "I'm worried about how we're handling things," I said. "We need to be more responsible, especially now with Olivia here." Jerry just shook his head. "You're always worrying about the future. Why can't we just enjoy the present?" "Because the present is a mess, Jerry," I shouted back. "We're barely making ends meet, and you're out buying new gadgets and planning trips we can't afford." A few weeks later, after another argument about his latest purchase, I decided to end our marriage. It was hard, but I knew it was the right thing for Olivia and me. I wanted her to have a stable and predictable life, not one filled with uncertainty and broken promises. The next few weeks were tough. Jerry moved out, and I started the process of filing for divorce. He wasn't happy about it, but he eventually agreed to joint custody and to pay child support. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Raising Olivia on my own was challenging but rewarding. She was my world, and I was determined to give her the best life possible. I found a job that allowed me to provide for us, and slowly we settled into our new routine. Over time, Jerry and I found a way to be civil with each other. He would visit Olivia occasionally and always made sure to send the child support on time. For that, I was grateful. It wasn't the life I had imagined when we first got married, but it was a life that worked for us. Olivia had just turned 19, and we were celebrating her acceptance into law school. It was a big deal for both of us. She had worked so hard, and I was incredibly proud. I decided to have a special dinner to mark the occasion, and for the first time in a long while, I invited Jerry, her father, to join us. "Hey Jerry, it's Kelly. I'm planning a dinner for Olivia. She got into law school, and I thought it would be nice if you came," I said, trying to keep it casual. "Kelly, that's great news. I'll be there," he replied, and we hung up. The night of the dinner, I was nervous. I wanted everything to be perfect for Olivia. I prepared her favorite dishes and set the table nicely. When Jerry arrived, he looked good, dressed in crisp shirt and slacks, carrying a small gift. Olivia beamed when she saw her dad. "Dad, you made it," she exclaimed. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world," Jerry said, hugging her tightly. He gave her a little something. Olivia tore open the wrapping to find a brand new smartphone. "Wow, Dad, this is amazing. Thank you," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation flowed easily. Jerry talked about his new job and his big house. He seemed to be doing well, and I was glad for Olivia's sake. "So, Kelly, you haven't changed a bit," Jerry said, looking at me across the table. I smiled awkwardly. Thanks, Jerry. You seem to be doing well. Yeah, things are good. Got a great job, nice house. Life's treating me well, he replied, clearly proud of himself. After dinner, Olivia announced she was going out to celebrate with her friends. Thanks for the dinner, Mom and Dad. The phone is awesome. I'll see you both later, she said, giving us both hugs before rushing out the door. Jerry and I were left alone, the house suddenly feeling very quiet. I started clearing the table and he stood up to help. We worked in silence for a while, the familiar routine of washing and drying dishes bringing back memories of our life together. After a while, Jerry broke the silence. Kelly, I've been thinking a lot lately, he said, his tone serious. About what? I asked, not looking up from the sink. About us, about Olivia, about everything really, he said, setting down the dish he was drying. I miss what we had. I miss you. I want to try again. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions. Jerry, we have a lot of history, and not all of it's good. Why now? Because I've realized what I lost. I want to be a better man for you, for Olivia, he said, his voice earnest. I hesitated, my mind racing with memories of our past and thoughts of what the future might hold. All right, Jerry, let's take it slow, see where it goes. A smile spread across his face. Thank you, Kelly. You won't regret this. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. It felt strange, but also a little exciting, the possibility of starting over. As the night went on, we talked more, sharing stories and laughing about old times. Getting back with Jerry was a big decision, but I decided to give it a try. We got married again, just a simple ceremony at the city hall with only Olivia and Jerry's older sister, Julie, there. It was a small, quiet event, nothing fancy. I hoped this time things would be different. Moving into Jerry's big house felt strange at first. It was so different from my small, cozy place. The house was huge, with lots of rooms and big windows. Jerry seemed happy to have me there, and for a while, things felt good. I started decorating, trying to make the place feel like home. Olivia came home for a visit a few days later. She was thrilled to see us together again. We sat in the living room catching up on her life at college. So how's law school treating you? Jerry asked, looking proud. It's tough, but I love it. I'm learning so much, Olivia replied, her eyes shining with excitement. I'm glad to hear that, kiddo. You're going to be a great lawyer, Jerry said, patting her shoulder. Thanks, Dad. It's good to see you both together again, Olivia said with a smile. After Olivia left, Jerry and I sat on the couch talking about our plans. We talked about traveling, maybe taking a trip to the mountains. It felt good to plan things together again. But as time went on, I noticed Jerry wasn't putting money into our joint account. I asked him about it one night while we were having dinner. Jerry, I've noticed you haven't been putting money into our account. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. He looked up from his plate, a bit annoyed. I've had some money problems, Kelly. I'm working on it. Money problems? You didn't mention anything about that before. What's going on? I pressed, feeling a bit uneasy. I didn't want to worry you. It's nothing big, just a few things I need to sort out, he said, looking away. As the months went by, I noticed Jerry buying new gadgets and posting pictures of expensive cars on social media. It started to bother me, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I hoped he would get his act together. One day, I was cleaning the house when I found a receipt for a luxury car rental in Jerry's jacket pocket. My heart sank. I decided to confront him about it that evening. Jerry, can we talk? I said, holding up the receipt when he walked in. What's this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It's just a rental, Kelly. No big deal, he replied. No big deal, Jerry. We're supposed to be saving money, not spending it on luxury cars, I said, feeling my frustration rising. I work hard, Kelly. I deserve to enjoy my money, he replied, his tone defensive. I get that, but we need to be smart about this. We have bills to pay, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm handling it, okay? You don't need to worry about it, he said, brushing me off. As the days went on, I noticed more signs of Jerry's spending: new gadgets, fancy clothes, and more car rentals. I tried talking to him about it, but he always brushed me off, saying he had it under control. For 4 years, I tried to talk to Jerry about saving money and managing our budget better, but he never listened. Every time I brought it up, Jerry would dismiss it, saying he had everything under control. But he didn't. Our bank account was always running low, and he kept buying new gadgets and renting flashy cars. He even posted videos of himself with these expensive items on social media, making everyone think we were living a luxurious life. Friends would comment on how lucky I was, but they had no idea how hard it was to keep everything together. Jerry's spending was getting out of hand, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. Our joint account was barely enough to cover bills, and he was flaunting new gadgets and expensive clothes. I decided it was time for a serious conversation. "Jerry, we need to talk," I said as I walked into the living room where he was lounging with his tablet. "Can't it wait, Kelly? I'm in the middle of something," he replied, not looking up. "No, it can't wait. This is important," I said firmly. "I found another receipt for a luxury car rental. We can't keep doing this, Jerry. We're running out of money. We're barely getting by, and you're spending like we're millionaires." "I work hard, Kelly. I deserve to treat myself," he said, looking annoyed. "Treating yourself is one thing, but this is out of control." "We're drowning here," I replied, feeling my frustration rise. "Stop exaggerating. We're fine. I've got it covered," he said, dismissing my concerns. "No, Jerry, you don't. You're acting like a spoiled kid, not a responsible adult," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He got up, glaring at me. "I don't need a lecture from you, Kelly. I know what I'm doing." He stormed out of the room, leaving me standing there, shaking with anger. I couldn't keep doing this. Something had to change. I kept hoping Jerry would change, that he'd finally see reason and start acting more responsibly, but it only got worse. Each month I'd find more receipts for gadgets and rentals. I felt like I was drowning, trying to make ends meet while he spent money like it was going out of style. It was like he hadn't changed at all since our first breakup. The man I hoped had grown up was still the same carefree guy who didn't think about tomorrow. One day, I got a call from my brother. Our mother had passed away. She lived in the same city where Olivia was studying. The news hit me hard. I told Jerry, and we decided to take the train to say goodbye. It was a long, silent journey. I was deep in thought, trying to come to terms with the loss when we arrived. Olivia was there to greet us. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. We hugged tightly, finding some comfort in being together. The farewell was simple, just close family. My brother and I managed everything quietly and modestly, just as Mom would have wanted. During the service, I realized Jerry wasn't there. I felt a pang of worry and turned to Olivia. "Have you seen your father?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head, looking just as confused. "No, Mom, I haven't seen him since we got here." I felt a knot in my stomach, a mix of worry and frustration. This was typical of Jerry, disappearing when I needed him most. But I pushed those feelings aside, focusing on saying goodbye to my mother. Jerry approached me only after the ceremony was over. I was very tired, so I didn't ask him where he had been all this time. After the funeral, we gathered at my mother's house for the will reading. It was just me, my brother Jack, Olivia, Jerry, and a few close relatives. The lawyer, Mr. Scott, a longtime family friend, opened the envelope and read aloud. "To my daughter, Kelly, I leave the house and all its contents," Mr. Scott read. "To my son, Jack, I leave my savings and any remaining assets." I felt a lump in my throat. The house was a big responsibility, but I was grateful. It was full of memories, a place where I could still feel my mother's presence. I looked over at Jack, who seemed okay with the arrangement. Suddenly, Jerry, who had been quiet until now, stood up. "We need to sell the house. It's too much for Kelly to handle on her own," he said, his tone more demanding than concerned. I stared at him, shocked. "Jerry, what are you talking about? We just heard the will. The house is mine." "Exactly, it's your house, so we should sell it and split the money," Jerry insisted, his face flushed with frustration. "No way, Dad," Olivia interjected, her voice firm. "I lived here with Grandma while I was in college. I plan to keep living here." Jerry waved her off. "Olivia, this is between the adults." "Kelly, we need to be practical about this," he continued. "Practical? You're talking about selling my mother's house like it's just another asset," I said, feeling my anger rising. "It is an asset, Kelly, and as your husband," Jerry tried to argue. "I have a say in what happens with it," Jerry argued, crossing his arms. Olivia stood up, glaring at her father. "Dad, I'm studying law, remember? Inherited property isn't shared between spouses. You don't get a say in this." Jerry's face turned red with anger. "Don't talk to me like that, young lady. This is a family decision, and I'm part of this family." Then he turned to me. "If you don't sell the house, I'll divorce you." The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I could see the shock and confusion on my relatives' faces. I took a step back, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. "Fine, Jerry. We'll talk about it when we get home," I said, my voice cold and steady. We left early the next morning, taking the train back home. Jerry was quiet the whole way, his anger simmering just below the surface. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through social media to distract myself. That's when I saw a video Jerry had posted. In the video, he was standing in front of a lavish funeral setup, talking about how close he was to my mother and how much she was suffering. The comments were filled with sympathy, and the video had over 1 million views. I felt a wave of anger and disbelief. He wasn't at my mother's funeral because he was at another funeral across the cemetery, filming himself against the background of a rich businessman's coffin. I couldn't believe how hypocritical and deceitful he was. Without looking up, I said, "Jerry, you're in for a surprise when we get home." He looked at me, a smug smile on his face. "So you've decided to sell? Good. We'll make a nice chunk of change. I'm thinking of getting a new car with the money." I just shook my head sadly, not saying another word. The train ride felt endless, my mind racing with anger and disappointment. When we got back to Jerry's house, there was a surprise waiting for him, his older sister, Julie, sitting at the dining table. I had called her in advance and asked her to come over for this conversation. The moment Jerry saw her, he froze. His confident demeanor vanished. "Julie, what are you doing here?" Jerry asked, his voice trembling a bit. Julie looked at him sternly. "I'm here because Kelly called me. We need to have a serious talk, Jerry. Sit down." Jerry hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat down across from her, looking nervous. I could see the fear in his eyes. I took a deep breath, ready to explain everything clearly. "Julie, I need to tell you what's been going on," I began, my voice steady. "Jerry has been spending a lot on gadgets and car rentals. He's been demanding that I sell my mother's house and even threatened to divorce me if I didn't agree." Julie's eyes narrowed as she turned to Jerry. "Is this true, Jerry?" Jerry looked down, not meeting her gaze. "It's not as bad as she's making it sound, Julie." "Not as bad," I snapped. "You've been wasting money and trying to bully me into selling my mother's house. That's pretty bad, Jerry." Julie shook her head, disappointment clear on her face. "Jerry, you haven't grown up at all. You're still acting like a child. You've never achieved anything on your own." Jerry looked up, a mix of anger and shame on his face. "That's not fair, Julie. I've tried my best." "Your best?" Julie scoffed. "The house you're living in isn't even yours, it's mine. I let you live here because I felt sorry for you. And now I find out you've been wasting money and bullying Kelly." Jerry's face turned pale. "Julie, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand." Out of hand, Julie repeated, her voice cold. You've been living off my generosity and trying to push Kelly around. And do you know what else? I've been paying Olivia's child support, not you. You couldn't even take care of your own daughter. You should be grateful to have a wife like Kelly. You don't deserve her. Tears welled up in my eyes at Julie's words. I turned to Jerry, my voice trembling with emotion. Jerry, the house should go to Olivia. She's an adult now, and it's her legacy. Jerry suddenly jumped up, his face red with anger. I don't give a damn about Olivia. I want half the money from the sale of that house, or else I want a divorce. The room fell silent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. You don't care about your own daughter? Fine, Jerry. I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared earlier. I handed him the divorce papers, my hand shaking. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them. Jerry's hands trembled as he reluctantly signed the papers. You're making a big mistake, Kelly. No, Jerry. The mistake was thinking you'd ever change, I said, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. Jerry finished signing and then bolted out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, feeling a mix of exhaustion and liberation. Julie walked over to me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Kelly, thank you for everything you've done for my brother. You've got Olivia. You'll get through this. After the divorce, I packed up and moved back to the city where I grew up. It felt good to be back in my mother's house, surrounded by familiar memories. The house needed some work, but it was home. It was a place where I could start fresh. Olivia graduated from college not long after. She married a wonderful guy, and now she's expecting a baby. I'm excited to become a grandmother. Life was starting to feel settled and peaceful, something I hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, I was in the garden pulling weeds when my phone rang. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered it, seeing Jerry's name on the screen. Hello, I said, already feeling a knot in my stomach. Kelly, it's Jerry. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice sounding desperate. What do you want, Jerry? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm in big trouble, Kelly. I've got debts piling up, and I need your help, he blurted out. No, Jerry, I'm not giving you any money, I said firmly. But Kelly, I need you. We could try again, make things right this time, he said, his voice almost begging. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to get married again. Are you out of your mind? Come on, Kelly, we had good times too. We can start over, he said, trying to sound convincing. Jerry, we're done. I've moved on, and you need to do the same. I'm not marrying you again, and I'm definitely not giving you money. I felt my anger rising as he sighed heavily on the other end of the line. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help me. I've helped you enough, Jerry. It's time you stand on your own 3 feet, I replied, my voice cold. Fine, Kelly. I see how it is, he said, his voice turning bitter. Goodbye, Jerry, I said and hung up the phone. I stood there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had finally closed that chapter of my life for good. Jerry's problems were no longer my problems, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I went back to my gardening, feeling more at peace than I had in years. I was ready to focus on my future, on my daughter, and on the new grandchild that was on the way. I was done looking back. It was time to embrace the life ahead of me with all its possibilities.